Hello and welcome to Stampscaping 101. I just had a question on impression pressure on Recollections foil. Okay, this can go for any type of foil or type of mirrored cardstock types of surfaces, the metallics and I don't know, the gold and silver types of surfaces that really don't have, if they're porous at all, I can't really tell, but for the most part, when you stamp on the surfaces, the media that you use on the surfaces will largely stay surface oriented. Okay, now dye-based inks and things like that want to absorb and to kind of penetrate the surface of the paper in order for them to leave their mark and to leave your good impressions. Okay, but these types of surfaces like that, if you try to use a dye-based ink on it, it is just not going to set up and dry. Or even if it does dry through evaporation and not through absorption at all, if you kind of rub your finger over it, it might come off fairly easily, okay? It'd be like stamping on not quite glass, okay, but these things are coated, to give you that type of look that that they do have. Okay, this is like the rainbow holographic one right here. This one's the jewel toned foil aqua or something like that. It comes out of that multicolored pack. Okay, all right. Now someone sent me a note saying, "Hey, I'm getting these. I can't get a good impression using the Brilliance inks." Okay, so I know she's using the same inks that I do. And I'll show you what was going on. I could tell instantly what was happening right here, okay? Now, her impressions for the Seaside Cove looked absolutely fine. It was a little bit thick, okay, because if you get one of these pads and they're brand new, we're talking about some really thick inks in here, okay? These are oil-based inks. I almost see them more as paints, okay? Now, this is a large stamp right here. I don't know what the dimensions are. What is that, about 6.75 inch or something like that. It's fairly big. So when we put this down on here, I'm standing up and I'm going from pressure from left, right, center, sometimes top and bottom. You don't want to rock your stamp, otherwise you're going to get that kind of perimeter smudging that happens, kind of, not on a huge level or anything like that, but nevertheless, it's noticeable, okay? All right, so I'm getting that down right there, and see, like there, the impression comes out beautiful. All right, I'm using the rainbow holographic just because you can see it a lot better than if I used a dark paper like that, yeah, just for this purpose right here, okay? So I was pressing pretty hard on this one, right? Okay. So let's take a look and see where kind of the things started happening with this piece right here, okay? All right, let's see. One of the stamps that was used was I think it was the couple here, maybe some rocks. Let's see, let's get this mounted up here. Okay, these are some tiny rocks. All right, now, when you go, I have a separate video on this too. It's called Impression Pressure. Okay, if you ever have any kind of difficulty getting certain types of impressions nice and crisp, that's the video to look at. But this is covering the same type of thing. Okay, now when you have a small type of stamp like this, if you use the same pressure that you used on something like this that has probably, I don't know, 5,000 little dots on it or something like that, that pressure is going to get distributed amongst, throughout this entire piece, the entire surface area, okay? Now, if we take something like this small rock right here, if we use that same type of pressure, that little crisp little impression like that might look like this, okay? You see what I mean? I used about the same amount of pressure because if I use the same amount of pressure on this one, it's getting distributed, on a very wide area. If we do that with this one, it's getting smashed down, right? So it's like the difference between like a push pin, trying to put a push pin into a cork board, or if we took this and tried to push this into a cork board, it's not going to happen because there's so much surface area. Okay, but let's see what happens when we use this one on this foil, okay? Good impression pressure, okay? Nice crisp impressions of that pebble texture, okay? But now let's look at it if we use a lot of pressure, okay? Smashing it down like that, okay? All right, do you see what's happening here? Here we go. Do you see how it's blank in the middle? You know, where that is right there? It's almost white, right? In that center section. And it's darker around the perimeter. It's because what happens is this is a thick ink. This doesn't really apply to, let's say, if we're doing dye-based inks on matte paper or even glossy cardstock, something like that. Those papers are porous, so dye-based inks are thinner and they're penetrating the surface of the paper and staining it, okay? You can still get a very smudged image like this, okay? This is, you know, this is pigment ink, though, which is thick ink. Remember, it's almost like paint, okay? Smudging it into this paper, so it's really getting smudged out. With something like this, it would be like doing this type of thick ink on glass or something like that. What happens is, this is the surface, this is like a little, these are my little rocks, and it's getting squeezed so much that all that ink is getting squeezed out from underneath my piece of rubber where it's making contact with the surface and smudging out on the side. If I took my finger and inked it up and pressed it into a piece of glass, it's not going to leave me a good fingerprint like this, right? It's going to, let me see if I can even get enough ink on this. Okay. Alright. Not a great demonstration right here, but you can see where I press the hardest, it's squeezed out, right? You know, and there's ink around it, okay? Now see if I use, like, lighter ink, you know? I don't know. It's giving me, I need to re-ink. I took all the ink off my finger right there, but that's what's going to happen. So let's take a look and see what happened over the course of a lot of these impressions here, okay? Again, the Seaside Cove looked great. And by the way, if you ever have any problems with anything, oops, I just smeared that right there. You can really erase this just fine. But if you ever have any problems like that, don't just keep working and working and working, you know. If it's something that's happening from a technical standpoint, just send me an email. I can tell. I told her, and like I could tell what was happening in, I don't know, like 1 second, okay? And I just told her what to do and how to avoid it, okay? So good impressions like this, okay? I'm even going for some lighter impressions to get that multi-value tone from one inking like that. See that? Okay, but let's take a look at the same concept, though, across the other stamps that she was using. Now, I purposely use this reed stamp in my impression pressure video, okay? It's because there's more surface area in a concentrated area down below here and less up top, okay? Let's see what that stamp is supposed to look like, okay? Right down there. Now what I do when there's more image down here than up here, or on any stamp, okay? That goes the same thing for this one right here, okay? There's more surface area down here and less up here. So if I squeeze, you know, at the top of something like this, this one's a perfect example right here, okay? I didn't ink up the whole thing, but I'll show you what this looks like, okay? Just good, even pressure. I'm not being real careful about it, okay? But what we don't want to do is take that tree stamp right there, press really hard, and then press super hard, like at the top, and then you get that big smudgy area, right? This is good impression pressure. See, I don't even really press up there too much. I'm really pressing down here, because that is just a small little area, so a little bit of distribution of pressure over the whole thing, or through the, you know, the heavier part is going to get up there, okay? You don't need to press those small areas too much. So let's take a look at this one right here. This is what was going on right here. Well, here I'll show you a good impression. All right. All right. See how crisp the tops of those reeds are right up there, okay? Now let's use way too much pressure, and it would be even more extreme with them because I think they just got their Brilliance pad, so it probably has, I don't know, twice as much ink on here. So that being said, you know, if you have a brand new pigment ink pad, a lot of us have, or even if it's not brand new, if you haven't used them too much and there's a lot of ink on it, just kind of put your ink, you know, ink it up a little bit, and then you can kind of do a little bit of a drag like that, okay? But I want to get, a good example of, what was probably occurring here, okay? All right, so let's do this one right next to that one right there. And let's press down. Okay, let's squeeze a lot of that ink off. That one didn't look too bad. But my tops are better, but her interiors were really bad. Let's see. Let's see if I can get this really inked up. A lot more extreme here. Okay. It's giving me a pretty solid impression right there, but you can see. Oh, I don't know. Can you see that right there? See that strip down the middle, that white area? Okay. It's because that's really, how thin the reed is, but it just kind of blobbed all on the perimeter like that. See that right there? You can see a little bit down here. Okay, but let's take a look at the people here too, okay? My Brilliance ink pad, I keep mine kind of medium dry, okay? I really don't want to ink it up fully inked just for this demonstration, because then I'm going to have to work with this pad, on future scenes, or my next few scenes, and it's going to be over-inked, okay? So, I don't know, you don't want your pads to come to you kind of medium dry, though, or even medium. You do want them inked up, but just, like I said, be careful about your, how much you use, get it coated good, but don't press into it too much, okay? Alright, so let's go with this couple right here. Let's see if I can get them to kind of, I don't know what we would call this, ghosting or something like that. Yeah, okay. That's a perfect example right here. Let me get you a good impression, okay? Okay. Now, good even pressure. Don't do it where you're not pressing at all or something like that. Okay. So, anyways, I got a little right there here. Let me get these guys right here. I was a little bit too careful with it just for the purpose of this video right here. Okay. Okay. There we go. These guys look like kind of like aliens or something like that. All right. We did get some ink in the middle here, okay? But the white outline right there is really the perimeter of the design, okay? And then this whole area right around here is kind of the squeeze out, okay? We got it right here too. They look like space people or something like that. These ones are a little bit better. I missed a little bit right here, but I don't know, it was a little bit of a dry one. But that's what you want right here, okay? That's what they would look like right here. I don't really sweat that, but all right. So that is foil, and I think you can see what I mean by saying, this is almost like, like stamping on glass or something like that, okay? Now let's see if this will still allow me to wipe this off. Yeah. Okay, this has been sitting here, a few minutes, and the Brilliance inks are quick drying inks, okay? They're not so quick, okay, that you can't do this with them. So I told her, hey, if you didn't heat set those, just wipe them right off, and you can use this again, no problem. It might be a little bit, I don't know, different of a surface quality. I mean, you can kind of see my impressions down there a little bit. But I mean, if we stamp over this, it's not going to be any big deal. So, you're ready to go again, all right? That's the beauty of these types of inks like this. They will dry in there, and then you can heat set this in 20, 10 seconds or something like that, okay? If you get your impressions down, you can heat set it and it will dry. I love VersaFine Clair and everything like that, but on cardstocks or that type of paper that's porous, and that ink can dry just fine. I don't know about you. I haven't been able to get something like this, a specific specialty ink to dry on this, okay? Stays on or something like that. It's kind of a specialty ink too. They're designed to stamp on different types of surfaces. So something like this, it's an oil-based ink, just like the VersaFine, but it has some kind of quick drying component in there, or just something that will allow it too dry on this. You can see it doesn't dry so fast. So it gives you plenty of time to manipulate it, or and then heat set it, or just letting it air dry. 1 or 2 days sometimes. Sometimes it'll dry in an hour. It just depends on where you are and the kind of the relative humidity of it. But impression pressure, okay, adjusting it accordingly. Every Brilliance ink isn't going to be the same, because if you're using a brand new one, it's going to have probably 3 times as much ink as where I like to keep mine after I've used that ink initially. But you can use a brand new one, believe me. I love brand new pads and getting them. I just, have to be careful about how much ink I use on it. Not so much with, if I'm using this type of ink on, to make my impressions on like a cardstock or something like that, because the ink is absorbing in. But on something like this, you got to watch out for that, that spread out type of condition right there. See that right there? They look more like cattails, right? And you can see down the center of it like that. Now see down here, I didn't get so much of that spread out, right? Because it's really hard to make that air. Let me try it here. Because that pressure is getting distributed amongst a much wider area instead of just on the grass tips like that, okay? Let me see if I can do it here. Yeah, I can't even do it here. I can't even press that hard with the amount of ink. Now, if I had 5 times as much ink, maybe it would spread out. It'd be like putting, if I put something like toothpaste on my finger, okay, and I went like this, and I just barely tapped it, and I lift it up, you would see my finger there, but if I smashed it down into the paper like that, it would come out from underneath there, and it would get, pressed out on the sides, and what you would see is more as the toothpaste on the side of my finger, okay? So anyways, I feel like I'm doing a demonstration on a chalkboard at school or something like that, or at a school. Impression pressure. Adjust accordingly, and depending on how much surface area. Surface area, too, it's not a matter of size of a stamp. If this image right here was an outline of a tree, okay, it was just a line, that's not a lot of surface area because it's this tiny little line defining a tree. This right here, it's a solid, so there's much more surface area to it. And even though this one are made out of dots, it's a very wide area and they're condensed, okay? So this, there might be, I don't know, there might be 5,000 dots on here or something like that. They call that stippling, okay? And there's some solids down here, like in the rocks and so forth. But, okay, so just remember that, solids take more pressure because of the distribution of pressure across the surface of the stamp that you are, impressing. And, I don't know, adjust accordingly. Practice a little bit if you need to, just to get the feel of it. If you're doing it on something like foil, find your touch with it. Use a couple different things, make your impressions. And if you press too hard, find that ideal kind of impression pressure. Don't be too gingerly with it. We want good impressions. But again, you just don't want that squeeze out. And just kind of wipe it off like that. And you're ready to go. Alright, so anyways, hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions like that, technical types of things, I don't know, I see it all the time. Someone is saying, oh, I tried that and I did it, I did the card 5 times or something like that, and I find something was happening in there. And I can usually tell from experience kind of the thing that's happening from the technical standpoint, depending on what the media and surface combination they're going with. And I can usually tell if a pad is super juicy or something like that, or if that's playing into it, or if it was kind of the order that they're applying something and pressures and things like that. I don't know. I wouldn't say I've seen it all, but I've seen a lot. And we can get it kind of straightened away, and we can have you going in, I don't know. I try to get back with my emails as soon as possible. I just got this question on this video, I don't know, I saw my email 30 minutes ago or something like that. But we can get you up and running in no time with the correct technique, depending on your media surface combinations, unless it's a medium that I have never worked with before at all. Okay? All right, thanks for watching.